Good morning everyone. We're here in this morning to talk to you about the Philippine history spaces for conflict and controversies. This chapter, we will analyze 4 historical problems in the Philippine history and attempt to apply that we have learned thus far in the work of a historian in the process of historical inquiry. So, everyone here in the class already know that the history is the study of the past, right? But a more contemporary definition is centered on how it impacts the present through its consequences. So, Geoffrey Barraclough defined history as the attempt to discover, on the basis of the fragmentary evidence, the significant things about the past. He also notes the history we read, though based on facts, strictly speaking not factual at all but a series of accepted judgments, such as judgments of historians on how past should be seen make the foundation in historical interpretation. So the image that have been shown in front of your screen is what we call the Code of Kalantiaw. So it is a medical legal code in the epic history of Maragitas. Before, it was revealed as wax. It was a source of pride for the people of Aklan. In fact, a historical marker was installed in the town of Batan in Aklan in 1956. So, this image shown in your screen is what we called a poem. Titled Sa Aking Mga Kabata, is a poem perfectly written by Jose Rizal when he was 8 years old, and is probably one of Rizal's most prominent works. There is no evidence to support the claim that this poem with the now immortalized lines, ang hindi magmahal sa kanyang salita, mahigit sa hayop at malansang isda, was written by Rizal, and worse, the evidence against Rizal's authorship of the poem seems all unsaleable. There exists no manuscript of the poem handwritten by Rizal. The poem was first published in 1906 in a book by Hermenegildo Cruz. Cruz said he was received the poem from Gabriel Beato Francisco, who claimed to have received it in 1884 from Rizal's close friend, Saturnino Rasiles. Rizal never mentioned writing this poem anywhere in his writings, and more importantly, he never mentioned of having a close friend by the person of Rasiles. With several possibilities of interpreting the past, another important concept that we must note is multi-perspectivity. This can be defined as a way of looking at historical events, personalities, developments, cultures, and societies from different perspectives. This means that there is multitude of ways by which we can view the world, and each could be equally valid and at the same time equally partial as well. History writing is by definition biased, partial, and contains preconceptions. The historian decides on what source to use, what interpretation to make more apparent depending on what his end is. Historians may misinterpret evidence, attending to those that suggest that a certain event must happen and then ignore the rest that goes against the evidence.
There has always been an importance of studying and knowing the first that happened in the Philippine history. This case study will focus on the historiographical events where the first Catholic Mass in the Philippines took place. The utilization of evidence and interpretation of reading historical events are also included in this discourse. It is important for us to know the exact place where the first Catholic Mass occurred, but in our present case, it is hard for us to determine the evidences used in that event, because it might have been vanished as the time passes by. As the historians claim and believe that but one is the site where the first Mass took place. This place was known and recognized for the first Catholic Mass in the Philippines that was celebrated and held on April 8, 1521. But one claimed that they used elementary reading as their primary source of that event. Historians also assert that there are only 2 primary sources that they use and referred to in identifying and recognizing the site of the first Mass. One is the log kept by Francisco Albo. He was one of the pilot of Magellan's ship in Trinidad, and the other one was more detailed and complete, which was the account of Antonio Pigafetta, that was entitled as the First Voyage Around the World. Pigafetta and Albo are members of Magellan's expedition. They are also considered as the eyewitness of the first Catholic Mass in the Philippines. The first Mass in the Philippines was held in Butuan and not in Limasawa, because some historians argued that the first Catholic Mass was in Limasawa on the southern tip of Leyte, and some said it happened in Masao, Butuan. The researchers investigates for facts and evidences that may lead them to a conclusion on where the first Mass truly held. They only used two primary sources that they referred in identifying the site or location of the country's first Catholic Mass.
Albo's slug on the 16th of March 1521, as they sailed in the westerly course from Landrones, they saw land towards the northwest, but owing to many shallow places, they did not approach it. They found later that its name Yunagan. They went instead that same day southward to another small island named Suluan, and there they anchored. There they saw some canyons, but these split at Spaniards' approach. This island was at 9 2/3 degrees north latitude. Departing from two islands, they sailed westward to an uninhabited island of Gada, where taking a supply of wood and water. From the island, they sailed towards a large island named Silani that was inhabited and was known to have gold. Sailing southwards, they turned southwest to a small island called Mazava. The people of Mazava, there are Spaniards planted across upon a mountain top. They sailed again towards Silani, northwesterly direction. They saw three islands. They entered a channel between two islands which was called Matan and Subu, and anchored at the town of La Bella, Subu, where they stayed for many days and obtained provisions and entered into a peace pact with the local king. Town of Subu was on the east-west with the island of Suluan and Mazava. But between Mazava and Subu, there were so many shallows that the boats could not go westward.
Primary source, which is Pigafetta's testimony on the route of Magellan's expedition. So we begin on March 16, 1521, and that is a Saturday. Magellan's expedition sighted a highland named Zamal, and this was around 300 leagues westward of Ladrones, and that is now called the Marinas Islands. And then on March 17, the next day, after sighting Zamal, they landed on another island which was uninhabited. And when they landed on the island, what they did was that they set up two tents for the sick crew, and they had a soul killed for them. And then Magellan decided to name the island Homono. Oh, the name of the island was Homono. So on that same day, Magellan named the entire archipelago the islands of Saint Lazarus. And then on March 18, they saw a boat coming towards them with 9 men in it. And what happened was that there was an exchange of gifts, and Magellan also asked these men to bring food supplies for them if they will be coming back. So the men said, okay, we will be coming back with food supplies next time. And then on the place where they were staying at that time, they actually saw 2 springs of water in the place of Hamanhan. And then Magellan decided to rename the place the Watering Place of Good Omen. And then on March 22, the natives that they met previously, who Magellan asked to bring them food the next time they came back, actually returned and brought them food supplies. And then Magellan's expedition stayed 8 days on the island of Hamanhan. So this was from March 17 until the following week, Monday, which was March 25. So as for March 25, what simply happened was that they left the island of Hamanhan, and the route taken by the expedition after leaving Hamanhan was toward the west-southwest between 4 islands. Those 4 islands were namely Senalo, Hainanhan, Ibuson, and Albarain. And then on March 28th, Thursday, in the morning of Holy Thursday, they anchored on an island where the previous night they had seen light or bonfire. So what simply happened was Magellan saw fire or bonfire in a certain place, and he was like, "Yo, let's go there." So that is what pretty much happened. And then the name of the place where they landed on that day was called Mazawas, and they remained in Mazwa Island for 7 days. And then on April 8th, they left Mazwa Island and they were bound for Cebu. And the route that they took for Cebu, they actually went past 5 islands, namely Ceylon, Bohol, Canighan, Baybay, and Gatighan. And from the Camotes Island, they sailed towards Zubu. And then on April 7 at noon, they entered the harbor of Zubu. And to clarify, Zubu is Cebu, so do not confuse the two. They're just the same place. And that concludes Pigafetta's testimony.
Primary source: Pigafetta and 7 Days in Mazwa. First day, Thursday, March 28th was Holy Thursday. In the morning, a small boat, Boloto, came with 8 natives to whom Magellan threw trinkets as present. 2 hours later, 2 larger boats, Balanghay, came in one of which the native king sat. Second day, Friday, March 29, Magellan sent his slave interpreter ashore in a small boat to ask the king if he could provide food supplies, and to say that they had come as friends. The king himself came in a boat with 6 or 8 men and went up Magellan's ship and exchanged gifts. Third day, Saturday, March 30, on Good Friday, Pigafetta and his companion visited a native town in Italy and met the king and his son. The following morning, Saturday, they left their host and returned to the ships they were sailing on. Day 4, Sunday, March 31. Magellan sent a priest ashore with some men to prepare for the Mass. Mass was celebrated, after which a cross was venerated. Magellan and the Spaniards returned to the ship for the noonday meal, but in the afternoon they returned ashore to plant the cross on the summit of the highest hill. Day 5, Sunday, March 31. Magellan asked the kings of Ceylon which ports he should go to in order to obtain more abundant supplies of food than were available in that island. Zubu was the port with the most trade, and he asked for someone to guide him there. Later that evening, the king of Mazwa changed his mind and said he would conduct Magellan to Cebu. Day 6, Monday, April 1. Magellan sent men ashore to help with the harvest, but no work was done that day because the 2 kings were sleeping off their drinking bout the night before. Day 7. Work on the harvest during the next 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, 2nd and 3rd of April, is expected to be very busy for farmers in the Cambrian valleys. The 8th and last day, Thursday, April 4, they leave Mazwa bound for Cebu. In the Pigafetta's account of origin of Christianity in the Philippines, a crucial aspect of the town of Butuan is not mentioned.
The age of exploration is the period of time when the European rulers began exploring, conquering, and colonizing the world. Their initial goal was to find and discover new routes by sea to go to Asian countries. They began maritime expedition to locate alternative routes to Asia because they believed that it is more expensive if they will travel by land. Christopher Columbus was the one who proposed to have a shortcut on Asia. Spaniards also colonized some parts of North America, Mexico, and South America during the 16th century. European travelers also reached and arrived in the Philippines during their voyage. On the latter part of their exploration, European rulers would still continue to conquer other land and continent. After Magellan's death, the survivors of his exploration chooses to stay in Mindanao and went to Butuan. For instance, Pigafetta strongly narrate and describe their trip in a river, but this account was already happened after the death of Magellan. The Age of Exploration was one of the most prominent historic events in world geography. European rulers began to search and find new trading routes to Asia by sea so that they could easily and quickly acquire spices for cheaper prices and to spread religion around the globe. The Age of Exploration will help future explorers and travelers in navigating and mapping new routes.
Spanish accounts of the Cavite Mutiny. The documentation of Spanish historian Jose Montero y Vidal centered on how the event was an attempt in overthrowing the Spanish government in the Philippines. Although regarded as a historian, his account of the mutiny was criticized as woefully biased and rabid for a scholar. Another account, from the official reported written by Governor General Rafael Izquierdo, implicated the native clergy, who were then active in the movement towards secularization of parishes. These two accounts corroborate each other. Primary source: excerpts from Montero's accounts of the Cavite Mutiny. Source: Jose Montero y Vidal, Spanish version of the Cavite Mutiny of 1872. The Spanish Revolution, which overthrew a circular throne, the propaganda carried on by an unbridled press against monarchical principles, attentatory of the most sacred respects toward the dethroned majesty. The democratic and republican books and pamphlets, the speech and preaching of the apostles of these new ideas in Spain, it was toward these goals that they started to work. With the powerful assistance of a certain section of the native clergy, who out of spite toward friars, made common cause with the enemies of the mother country. At various times, but especially in the beginning of year 1872, the authorities received anonymous communications with the information that a great uprising would break out against the Spaniard the minute the fleet at the Cavite left for the south, and that all would be assassinated, including the friars. But nobody gave importance to these notices. What happened in the Cavite Mutiny Spanish accounts? Cavite Mutiny, January 20, 1872, brief uprising of 200 Filipinos, troops, and workers at the Cavite Arsenal, which became the excuse of Spanish repression of the embryonic Philippine nationalist movement. Ironically, the harsh reaction of the Spanish authorities served ultimately to promote the nationalist cause.
On the Mutiny of Cavite 1872, clergy, mestizos, and native lawyers, abogadillos, ways to prosper, mutiny, protested against the injustice in the government, protested against the usury or the illegal action or practice of lending money at unreasonably high rates of interest. They have encouraged the rebellion. No period planned the establishing a monarchy. Indios has no word in their language to describe a different forms of government whose head in Filipino is called hari. Instead, they have selected a price to be head, and that was Di Burgos Zamora or Jacinto Zamora. Reasons for revolution: the abolition of the privileges enjoyed by the workers. Other reasons include the presence of clergy who, out of spite against Spanish friars, conspired and supported by rebels. According to Izquierdo in unbiased report, the attempt to overthrow the Spanish government in the Philippines to install a new hari in the persons of Fathers Burgos and Zamora. Based on the report, native clergy attracted the supporters by giving them the charismatic assurance that their fight will not fail. According to Spaniards, 1872 mutiny was premeditated and was part of conspiracy among educated leaders, mestizos, lawyers, residents of Manila and Cavite. January 20, 1872. The fireworks display during the Feast of Virgin of Loreto allegedly mistook as a signal of stock. La Madrid led the 200-man contingent, but the field Cavitenos did not arrive. Father Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora were sentenced to be executed. January 20, 1872. Others were implicated, such as Joaquin Pardo de Tavera, Antonio Regidor, Jose and Pio Basa, and other Filipino lawyers. February 17, 1872. Gomborza was executed to serve a treat to Filipinos to never attempt to fight Spaniards again. In particular, Izquierdo blamed the unruly Spanish priest for stockpiling, malicious propagandas grasped by Filipinos. He reported to the King of Spain that the rebels wanted to overthrow the Spanish government to install a new hari in the likes of Fathers Burgos and Zamora. The mutiny was sparked on January 20, 1872, when the laborers received their pay and realized the taxes as well as the falia. The fine one paid to be exempt from forced labor had been deducted from their salaries. The primary cause of the mutiny is believed to be an order from Governor General Rafael D. Izquierdo to subject the soldiers of the engineering and artillery corps to personal taxes, from which they were previously exempt. The Cavite mutiny is an aim of natives to get rid of the Spanish government in the Philippines due to the removal of privileges enjoyed by the laborers of the Cavite arsenal, such as exemption from the tribute and forced labor. The Cavite mutiny led to the persecution of prominent Filipinos. Secular Price, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, who would then be collectively named Gomborza, were tagged as the masterminds of the uprising. The summary of Cavite Mutiny. Cavite Mutiny, January 20, 1872, brief uprising of 200 Filipino troops and workers at the Cavite Arsenal, which became the excuse for Spanish repression of the embryonic Philippine nationalist movement. Ironically, the harsh reaction of the Spanish authorities served ultimately to promote the nationalist cause. Reference: excerpts from the official report of Governor Izquierdo.
Differing accounts of the events of 1872. Number 1, Pardo de Tavera's account of the Cavite Mutiny. Number 2, Plocot's account of the Cavite Mutiny. Who is Dr. Trinidad Hermenegildo Pardo de Tavera? He is a Filipino scholar and researcher who wrote a Filipino version of the bloody incident in Cavite. According to Pardo de Tavera, the incident was merely a mutiny by Filipino soldiers and laborers of the Cavite arsenal to the dissatisfaction arising from the Dacoranian policy of Izquierdo, or the abolition of privilege and prohibition of the founding of the School of Arts and Trades. The central Spanish government was planning to deprive the friars of all the powers of intervention in matters of civil government and direction and management of educational institutions. An excerpt from Pardo de Tavera's account of the Cavite Mutiny, he says Filipinos had great hopes of an improvement in the affairs of their country. The friars feared that their power in the colony would soon be complete a thing of the past. Who is Edmond Plochot? He is a French writer who complemented the Tavera's account and analyzed the motivation of the 1872 Cavite Mutiny. An excerpt from Plochot's account of the Cavite Mutiny, he says, the arrival in Manila of Gen Izquierdo put a sudden end to all dreams or reforms. Such a policy must really end in a strong desire on the part of the other to repress cruelly. Differing accounts. Friar used Cavite Mutiny as a part of a large conspiracy to cement their dominance. They showcased the mutiny as part of a greater conspiracy in the Philippines by Filipino to overthrow the Spanish government. Unintentionally, it resulted in the martyrdom of Gamborza and paved way to the revolution. Then Rizal dedicated his second novel, El Filibusterismo, to their memory. I dedicate my work to you as victims of the evil which I undertake to combat.
Primary source, excerpts from Plaquet's account of the Cavite Mutiny. Edmond Plaquet's The Cavite Mutiny of 1872 and The Martyrdom of Gamborza. General Torre created a junta composed of high officials, including some friars and 6 Spanish officials. At the same time, there was created by the government in Madrid a committee to investigate the same problems submitted to the Manila Committee. When the two finished work, it was found that they came to the same conclusion. And here are the summary of the reforms they considered necessary to introduce. Number 1. Changes in tariff rates at customs and the methods of collection. Number 2. Removal of surcharges in foreign importations. And number 3. Reduction of export fees. And number 4. Permission for foreigners to reside in the Philippines, buy real estate, enjoy freedom of worship, and operate commercial transforms flying the Spanish flag. And number 5. Establishment of an advisory council to inform the Minister of Overseas Affairs in Madrid in the necessary reforms to be implemented. And number 6. Changes in primary and secondary education. Number 7. Establishment of an Institute of Civil Administration in the Philippines, rendering unnecessary the sending home of short-term civil officials every time there is a change of ministry. And the 8th one is study of direct tax system. And lastly, abolition of the tobacco monopoly. These events are significant highlights in the Philippine history and have caused ripples right through time, directly influencing the decisive events of the Philippines Revolution toward the end of the century. These are considered a major factor in the awakening of nationalism among the Filipinos of that time and will continue to serve as one up until these present times. The Gamborza is the collective name of the 3 martyred priests, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, who were tagged as the mastermind of the Cavite Mutiny.
Gamborza were executed by garrote in public, as seen purportedly witnessed by a young Jose Rizal.
In the case study 3, did Rizal retract? We all know that Jose Protasio Rizal is identified as a hero of the revolution through his writings that center on ending colonialism and liberating Filipino minds to contribute of creating the Filipino nation state. Rizal's life work was committed to this end, especially when Jose Rizal wrote the No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo that gives light to the society and at bringing the Filipinos closer to the truth, where the society is urged to open its eyes to reality and rebel against the Spanish government for its oppression and abuse. His essay vilified not the Catholic religion but the friars, the main agents of injustice in the Philippine society. Therefore, Rizal wrote against the friars and the Catholic Church in the Philippines could deal heavy damage to his image as a prominent Filipino revolutionary. In some documents purportedly exist, allegedly signed by Rizal before his execution, and those documents referred to as the retraction, which means Rizal believed the Catholic faith and retracts everything he wrote against the church.
So this kind of history is about the death penalty or execution of Rizal. That's saying he truly retract. Now, first of all, what is retraction? Retraction is a action of drawing something back or back in. In other words, Jose Rizal regret of whatever he did to the person or to the group of people, and those are the Spanish government and the Spanish friars. And because of the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo that he wrote, Filipino nation becomes awake to the truth about discriminating the Philippine society by the Spanish friars, main agents of injustice.
And according to a primary source, Rizal Retraction, Friar Manuel Garcia discovered the original documents that saying Rizal sincerely retract on 18 May 1935. In Manila, 29 of December 1896, the day of retraction before he faced the death penalty on 30 December 1896. And that said, I declare myself a Catholic, and in this religion in which I was born and educated, I wish to live and die. I retract with all my heart whatever in my words, writing, publications, and conduct has been contrary to my character as son of the Catholic Church. Furthermore, the text of this retraction published in different places. First was in La Voz Española and Diario de Manila on the day of the execution, 30 December 1896. Second text was appeared in Barcelona, Spain, in the magazine La Juventud on 14 February 1897. However, the original text was only found in Archdiocesan. In testimony of Friar Vicente Balaguer, according to him, that Rizal woke up several times, confessed 4 times that he truly did the retraction, and he also attended a mass and prayed the rosary that he regret. Therefore, it has been used to argue the authenticity of the document.
The testimony of Cuerpo de Vigilancia, another eyewitness account, surfaced in 2016 through the research of Professor Rene E. Escalante. In his research, documents of the Cuerpo de Vigilancia included a report on the last hours of Rizal, written by Federico Moreno. The report details the statement of the Cuerpo de Vigilancia to Moreno. Eyewitness account of the last hour of Rizal. Source: Michael Charleston Chua, Retraction ni Jose Rizal, mga bagong dokumento at pananaw. Published December 29, 2016. Ayon sa pahayag, sumulat si Rizal ng isang papel na narinig niya ang retraksyon. Binanggit rin ang dalawang paring Jesuita na pumasok sa piitan ni Rizal, si Padre Villa Clara at Padre March, at dalawa pang tao, sina Juan del Fresno at Eloy Maure. Ganito ang ilang bahagi na sanaysay na isinalin na sa Ingles mula sa wikang Espanyol. Most illustrious sir, the agent of the Cuerpo de Vigilancia stationed in Fort Santiago to report on the events during the day in prison of the accused Jose Rizal, informed me on this day of the following. At 7:50 yesterday morning, Jose Rizal entered death row accompanied by his counsel, Senior Tabiel de Andrade and the Jesuit priest Villa Clara. At the urges of the former and moment after entering, he was served a light breakfast. At approximately 9, the assistant of the plaza, Senior Maure, asked Rizal if he wanted anything. He replied that at the moment he only wanted a prayer book, which was brought to him shortly by Father March. Senior Andrade left that row at 10, and Rizal spoke for a long while with the Jesuit fathers March and Villa Clara. Regarding religious matters, it appears that
These two presented him with a prepared retraction on his life and debts that he refused to sign. They argue about the matter until 12:30 when Rizal ate some poached egg and a little chicken. Afterwards, he asked to leave to write and wrote for a long time by himself. At 3 in the afternoon, Father March entered the chapel and Rizal handed him what he had written. Immediately, the chief of the firing squad, Senior Del Fresno, and the assistant of the plaza, Senior Maurer, were informed. They entered death row and together with Rizal, signed the document that the accused had written. It seems this was the retraction. Makikita na ang dalawang binanggit na opisyal, sina Juan Del Fresno at Eloy Maure, ay ang mga nakapirma mismo sa dokumento ng retraction na tumatayong mga saksi. Gayon din, binanggit ng gwardya na bago dalhin sa luneta si Rizal, ikinasal siya kay Josephine Brocket. At this morning of the 30th, the lover of Rizal arrived at the prison. Dressed in mourning, only the former entered the chapel, followed by a military chaplain whose name I cannot ascertain, donning his formal clothes and aided by a shoulder of the altar relief. The nuptials of Rizal and the woman who had been his lover were performed at the point of death. After embracing him, she left clothed with tears. At ang nakakagulat, itinala ni Moreno ang lahat ng taong pumasok sa selda noong gabing iyon. Ni minsan, walang binanggit na may pumasok na Padre Balaguer. Ibig sabihin, wala si Padre Balaguer doon. Maaaring secondary source na lamang siya at kinapanayam lamang sina Padre Villaclara at Padre March upang buuin ang kanyang testimonya. The retraction of Rizal remains to this day. Many scholars, however, agree that the document does not tarnish the heroism of Rizal. His relevance remains solidified to Filipinos and pushed them to continue the revolution which eventually resulted in independence in 1898.
What is the connection of Rizal to the Katipunan? The ancestor of the Katipunan as an organization is La Liga Filipina, an organization which founded by Rizal together with Andres Bonifacio, who is also a member of the organization. However, La Liga Filipina was transitory when the Spaniards exiled Rizal to the Pitan. On July 7, 1892, a few days after Rizal's exile, the former members decided to band together to establish the Katipunan. Moreover, the Katipuneros showed great appreciation to Rizal's work towards their goals, even if Rizal had not been officially part of the Katipunan. They used Rizal's name as a password as it is one of showing their appreciation towards Rizal. The leadership of the Katipunan, known as the Kataas-Taasang Sanggunian ng Katipunan, out of its 28 members from 1892 to 1896, 13 of them were former members of La Liga Filipina.
On June 21, 1896, Dr. Pio Valenzuela visited Rizal in the Pitan and informed of the plan of the Katipunan to launch a revolution. Rizal objected to Bonifacio's bold project, stating that such would be a veritable suicide. Valenzuela, however, warned Rizal that the revolution will inevitably break out of the Katipunan would be discovered. Rizal told Valenzuela that the timing was not right for a revolution. The people were not yet ready and they did not have enough weapons, since it would be a difficult fight the Spaniards who had the advantage of military resources. He added that the leaders of the Katipunan must do everything they could to prevent the spilling of Filipino blood. Wealthy and influential Filipinos. First, in order to gain financial assistance, he also recommended Antonio Luna had much knowledge and expertise of military tactics.
Filipino calls out for revolution against the Spanish colonial activities. The major reason was to end colonialism and to have democracy for them to start a new life as independent people. This point of time in the Philippine history called the Cry of Rebellion. The Cry of rebellion marks the start of the revolutionary events that swept the Spanish colonies in the late 19th century. This happened on August 1896 in the northeast of Manila. Teodoro Agoncillo said it was Bonifacio before the cedula or tax reset before the Katipuneros, while others says it was when Aguinaldo commissioned the Himno de Balintawak after the Pact of Biak na Bato failed. A monument of the heroes of 1896 was erected at the corner of Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, or EDSA, and in Bonifacio Drive on 1962, and then Cry was celebrated every 26th of August.
The dates and places of Cry. Various accounts of the Cry give different dates and places, but first let us start with Lieutenant Olegario Diaz, cried August 25, 1896 in Balintawak. Teodoro Catao, he is a Filipino historian, last week of August 1896, also in Balintawak. Santiago Alvarez, a Katipunero, put the Cry in Bahay Toro in Quezon City on August 24, 1896. That is just some of the people, date, and places of the Cry. Primary source: Accounts of Cry by Guillermo Masangkay. Source: Guillermo Masangkay's Cry of Balintawak at the House of Bisonia Zaide. Documentary Sources of the Philippine History, Volume 8 in Manila National Bookstore, 1990. August 26, there was a big meeting held in Balintawak at the house of Papalio Samson. There were delegate people who attended the meeting from different places like Bulacan, Cabanatuan, Cavite, and Barong. The meeting was with Andres Bonifacio and the acting secretary Emilio Jacinto. Teodoro Plata, Brisillo Pantas, and Pio Valenzuela opposed to start the revolution too early, but Andres Bonifacio told people that the leaders were arguing against starting the revolution early and appealed to them in a fiery speech in which he said, "You remember the fate of our countrymen who were shot in Bagumbayan? Should we return now the town, the Spaniards will only shot us. Our organization has been discovered, and we are all marked men. If we don't start the pricing, the Spaniards will get us anyway. What then do you say?" People shouted, "Revolt! Revolt!" Bonifacio asked people to give pledge if they were to protest. Bonifacio got the 6 or cedula of tax charged to each citizens. Bonifacio wanted people to destroy cedulas, then it will be the sign that they declare the severance from the Spaniards. The source is Pio Valenzuela, Cry of Pugadlawin in Rigordo Zaide and Sonia Zaide. The first place of refuge by Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Procopio Bonifacio, Teodoro Plata, Aguedo del Rosario, and Pio Valenzuela. They arrived in Balintawak on August 19 to August 20, 1896. After that, 500 members of Katipunan met during August 22, 1896 at the house and yard of Papalio Samson at Kangkong. After the meeting, many tore their cedula certificates and shouted, "Long live to the Philippines." Using the primary and secondary sources, 4 places have been identified. First is the Balintawak, Kangkong, Pugadlawin, and Bahay Toro, while the varied dates are 23, 24, 25, 26 of August 1896. According to Gregorio Encarnacion and Villegas, all the places in Balintawak is now part of Caloocan in Quezon City.